Hello and welcome to another episode of the Simon Friends podcast. I am Simon Short. Joining me tonight is Peyton Davila of Two Peas on a Pod. Peyton, welcome back in, man. How are you doing? Happy week after the draft. We are 1 week removed from the first round as this comes out. How are you feeling? Have you recovered? And what are you thinking?
I recovered very well, luckily, just because oftentimes for the last 3 years, it's felt like with the NFL draft, I always have like something that's happening during the draft that is preventing me from actually keeping up with what's going on, to
Hmm.
where like I can't just be on my phone or be in front of the TV or my laptop and constantly watching everything as it flows in. So really, this year what ended up happening is I had basically on Thursday, Friday was occupied, couldn't do anything. I was just like, well, I guess I'm just gonna like see the pics as they flow in on my phone. And then Saturday, we had busy Thursday, Friday, and luckily my wife said, you know what, I'm declaring today a rot day, which was perfect timing
Heck yeah.
because I literally spent like 2 hours in the morning before noon just catching up on like what happened on day two, especially because I was super busy that day. And then I just sat and watched a like 5 hour stream of rounds 4 through 7 live in time. I watched every pick of day
The most
three.
sicko version of watching the draft that you could be.
Correct, correct. And I
Let
was
me cram it all into Saturday before
correct. But
just sitting on the couch and watching day three.
right. But I wouldn't have had it any other way. It was great. I'm glad that I had that time to do that. And now I'm pretty ready to like now move into our really overthinking all these moves in the off season, and then going all the way from being in on them to being out on them, then back in on them, and then out on them again. It's going to happen. It happens like clockwork every off season where we find 50 different versions of what we think about these players who we've known were drafted to the teams that they were on for months before, and yet we've changed our opinion 5 different times.
Yeah, everyone's parsing the press conferences for rookie dynasty draft intel.
Yep.
That's already taken place, so I'm looking forward to those swings and how we feel about those guys and how rookie minicamp impacts what people think about the picks that they made, and then obviously into training camp and um, yeah, well, some way too early and way too brash analysis will be taking place very, very shortly. But we've got a couple weeks left where we are really going to live in this draft and diagnose it. Peyton and I are going to hand out some awards. Josh and I next week will be updating our power rankings for the off season via the draft. Ben will be on a week after that. In 2 weeks, we'll kind of take in or we'll look at our kind of our draft commandments and we'll take in some lessons that we learned from this draft and add some notes to that. And then in 3 weeks, we're just gonna have a full sicko O line draft recap show with Shane. So we'll kind of bookend the O line preview he and I had a few weeks ago. But Peyton, tonight we're just gonna do some general takeaways. I think between the two of us, we have one individual team specific award going out. We have a couple team based big picture awards coming out, and then we have a couple zoom out big picture what happened in the draft awards. Now, if you're here, because this is Simon Friends Pod, we do it as detailed as it gets. If you're looking for team by team breakdowns of the actual picks that happened, you're going to want to head over to Box Score Network's YouTube channel. Me and Ben sat down Thursday night right after the draft and recapped every pick from round one. We also have live reactions from each individual pick from Austin under the YouTube Shorts. You can also go to the videos and find my grades on every team. We have it by division under videos. Those are like 5 to 10 minute videos, but there's also short individual shorts for the individual team. So if you're looking for a specific team grade, team analysis, division grade, division analysis, or full first round recap, head over to the Box Score Network YouTube channel, and it's not going to slow down over there either. So all draft content, if you're looking for the really nitty gritty stuff, you can find over there. All right, enough plugs. We're going to get into it. Peyton, before we hand out our 6 actual awards, because this is me and Peyton, if this is your first time here, thank you. Welcome. Welcome in. Peyton and I hand out 3 awards that we make up every single month for just whatever is in the NFL that we want to talk about. So obviously, all of this is going to be draft related this week or this month. And Peyton, you have an honorable mention you want to hand out here at the top.
I do because I think this is like the only real non-analytical, like actual football ideology and theology. I think that this draft was the goat of original nicknames for players.
Ooh,
Like coming
okay.
into a draft and just the quantity and originality of nicknames that we have. I have a full list breakdown
Thank
of
you.
like all the original ones, and I have a couple of other suggestions that I think might develop as these
Okay.
guys go into the league that maybe depending on if they're good or not and if the internet takes hold, we'll see what happens. But first off, I'll start with kind of like some of the better known ones. Like Dominique Orange, aka Big Citrus, is
Hmm.
one of I think just all time great nicknames. But you have also like other defensive tackles like Dante Corleone, aka the Godfather,
Hmm.
Cade McDonald, aka like he has like three different iterations. There's like McPounder. Um,
That's
I think
great.
it's like I forget what Big Mac. Like they're all
Hmm.
burger centric. Elijah Surratt was known as Waffle House in college, which is like just another iteration of like 7-Eleven and like all these. Oh, I'm a great separator and like I'm always open kind of nickname. AJ Halsey's is one that's like very to me it gives like NBA street nickname where it was like
Hmm.
you could assign your creative
Hmm.
player one of these
Hmm.
nicknames. It was pretty, and his was Mr. Give Me That, which is
Yeah, that's
just
awesome.
like so unique and so like there's no way that that can be assigned to anybody else.
I
Like
can see the 70s like cursive writing on
yes,
it with the stars.
right.
Yep, fantastic.
Will Lee being known as the blanket is kind of funny because a like just fitting, but also it's not this super intimidating
Yeah,
nickname
like kind of
either.
soft,
Yeah,
snuggly,
yeah.
but on you like a blanket. I get it.
Justin Jolie, the tight end that was drafted by the not the Bengals, because it's the Broncos.
Hmm.
Uh, even if his last name only has one L, he was very lovingly known as Big Christmas in college, which is just
Good one.
awesome. Then we get into like Katron Allen, Fat Man is another one.
Hmm. Hmm.
Caden Proctor was known as Crispy
Hmm.
for very infamous reasons. If you want
Yeah,
to
not
read
great.
into why, not great reasons why. Um, but then you have Keelan Big Red Rutledge, which Big Red Rutledge sounds like a '90s WCW wrestler name, which is like just straight up, or
A
like
chewing gum
yeah,
or beef
exactly,
jerky flavor. Yeah.
yeah. And then the last one that's like the official one that I really loved was and it was a teammate nickname coming into the draft was Dylan Thieneman and Bryce Betcher out of Oregon. They were known as the CCU, which is the Caucasian Collision Unit, which is just very, very unique. And I don't know if we've had this array of nicknames that are all very original in this quantity in a single draft before. And then there were like three more that I just wanted to throw out there.
Pork
Michael
chop. Yeah.
Taff, safety out of Texas. I think he went to the Dolphins, I believe. Um, I want to
Too long a list of names that went to the Dolphins, man. I'm not gonna
yeah
know that for a couple years.
yeah his last name is spelled Taffe, and I during the regular season watching him at Texas I kept calling him Michael Taffy,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
so Laffy Taffy was very much
Hmm.
like
Hmm.
natural play on words there. Chris Brazzell, I feel like the internet has a very obvious opportunity to do
Uh-huh.
something very
Uh-huh.
NSFW there
Uh-huh.
with
Uh-huh.
his last name. And then Ted Hurst, I feel like there's something like a gravedigger type of like nickname, like something to do
Ooh.
with like death and like just him putting guys in a coffin in contested catch situations type of deal. Those are
Oh,
ones that I
hearse
think
in a
might
hearse.
end up,
Got it.
yeah,
Okay.
some of them like developing as the season goes, just those last three, but all the other ones are legit. And I just found this as a very fun nickname class.
Well, this is a great thing for us to now keep track of because on former iterations of this pod and previous pods we were on, Ronan Summers was our nickname aficionado,
Oh,
and that
jeez.
was certainly his department. So now that I know this of interest about you, we can just pass that baton over. So
Yeah.
Ronan, whenever you're on, that's still your realm. But while Peyton's here, he's gonna man that mantle for
I
you.
could be more of a supplement. I don't want to
Okay,
replace Ronan. We're,
great.
we're we're able to like tag team. He's probably going to find ones that I'm not aware of, and vice versa. Well, it'll be a joint effort on both of our
It was one
parts.
of those where I swore he was making them up. And then I would look it up, and it was like, no, this is what they called him in the fifth grade. And I was like, who are like you're Dane Brugler out here, but
Yeah,
only for nicknames.
right.
Okay, all right. Well, that was great. Thank you for that opening. Hopefully, everyone gets a little light into what we're doing here tonight. Um, I want to know, Peyton, do you want to give out the first actual award, or do you want me to go first?
I can give out like my real first
All right.
award. The which I know that the style that we talked about we're doing this is that you're going to be reading my
Oh
awards, and
yes, yes.
so
So we always
so
have we always end up with a theme for our awards. Now Peyton usually has his own. I usually have my own, and we pick a theme and then we name our awards after throughout whatever that theme is. And both of ours tonight are gonna be movies, Peyton, because you made the mistake of telling me you hadn't quite picked yours yet. So I just took the liberty to do one for you. So mine are all from the movie Draft Day. So mine are all quotes from the movie Draft Day. My annual watch took place last Tuesday. Um, I for the last 3 or 4 years, I've snuck in Draft Day quotes to episodes around this time. I mean, I think I had sound bites last year on a mock draft, so that was like probably peak. Um, so all of mine are just my awards are quotes from Draft Day. And then I was like, okay, Peyton needs a movie too. Peyton's a music guy. That Michael Jackson movie just came out.
okay,
So it's not as cool as like songs. Sorry.
that's fine.
My mind immediately went to Man in the Mirror, and I was thinking about some of your awards here. So all of these awards are going to be things that Peyton tells himself while looking at himself in the mirror.
Oh Jesus. Okay.
So
All
these
right.
you'll get the idea, everybody. So there's a long trail to get there, but in honor of the Michael Jackson movie, because I'm doing a movie and Peyton loves music, all of Peyton's awards are things that he says to himself while looking in the mirror.
I'm very
Um,
interested to see which one we start off with. I think we're going to go with in the order I sent you. So, um, the
the
first
position
award
group
is
then.
we can do that. Yes, that's actually a great starting
Okay,
point.
great. So here we go. I'm throwing that graphic up. This is a that is a tight end. The tight end award.
All right. So, and I will say, unfortunately, I don't have a lot of action going on back there, so it is very tight in general, because there's not really a whole lot there. Um,
It's perfect because the graphic is clearly a person who's checking out like his pants, the back of his pants in a mirror. Don't look up guy looking at butt in mirror, by the way. That
right.
does
That
not go
that
well on
sounds
Google.
that's
So this
along the lines of Chris Brazel's future nickname. Yeah.
exactly, it was a lot of Chris Bradley actually. And just kidding, that's not true. But it is actually all literally covered up by tight ends. I wasn't that smart to do that meta intentionally of he's looking at tight ends in the mirror, but there's a lot of tight ends on the screen right now. We'll just say that.
Great. All right. So this was a big talking point of this draft was, and it really it reared its head in the second round, right?
Yep.
Um, Namely with two picks in particular between the Jags taking Nate Borkircher and the Texans taking Marlon Klein, right? Ahead of a lot of other very talented tight ends that many
Yes.
people had much higher in consensus, right?
Mhm.
Um, and the thing that I gathered from this is there's a clear trend that the NFL wants to get heavier, and we've seen this over the past few seasons. But the more whenever these kind of trends, so to speak, happen in the draft, there does seem to be some kind of like finite to when we've kind of jumped the shark a little bit too. I don't know if I'm using that terminology properly, but like where the jig is kind of up and
Yep.
it's gone too far, so to speak. The best example I can provide is like a almost a recent history to a trendy um how do I say it? Like a trendy team building strategy or like movement within the NFL bleeding into the draft and then really impacting like how certain players are taken much higher than consensus, right?
Hmm.
And the example that I immediately thought of that this kind of reminds me of like this kind of movement in regards to team building is when in after the Chiefs Mahomes or the that type of team building or the Rams high scoring after that Monday Night Football game, it felt like
Hmm.
everybody all of a sudden was just like, we are going to get as many of these fast wide receivers and just
Hmm.
like build on speed and do a ton of deep shots all the time and figure out how to use these guys in a lot of ways, and use motion with these guys who are faster than everybody else. And it really started in 2019 where, and I was really trying to pinpoint guys that were clearly overdrafted just
Hmm.
based on the fact of they fell in line with this trend that was going on, right? So in 2019, we have McCole Hardman, Paris
Mm-hmm.
Campbell, and Jalen Hurd, who were all taken in the top 100 and were very much like overdrafted versus
Mm-hmm.
where everybody had it ranked. And lo and behold, none of them really panned out. Maybe
Yep.
McCole Hardman, who's had like a long-ish career in the NFL, but
But on the
no,
Chiefs in that offense. Yeah.
right, exactly. Um, Next year, 2020, Henry Ruggs, which for
Mm-hmm.
non-football reasons was not good, but like even in the short stint, it was kind of more theoretical than it was
Mm-hmm.
actual success based on his speed. And then in the second round, KJ Hamler, like a guy who was just
Mm-hmm.
pure speed, but didn't really develop any outside of that, and is now in the UFL. Um, 2021, Kadarius Toney in the first round. Very similar idea. And then in the second round, you have rest in peace to him, but Rodnell Moore,
Mm-hmm.
very much like a move him around the formation, give him the ball in space, and like also just tell him to run down the field really fast. And
Mm-hmm.
then even more to that effect, Tutu Atwell,
Mm-hmm.
which Tutu's I guess like kind of been the best version of any of these guys.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But even then, it's saying a lot because like when he was drafted, everybody was shocked how high he
Yeah.
was drafted given that whole wide receiver class at that point in time. And then in 2022, it felt like kind of the last time that this happened in the same way when Tyquan Thornton was drafted,
Mm-hmm.
like 200 spots above where people thought he would
Mm-hmm.
go.
Mm-hmm.
And the point is that like the trends that cause the draft to move in a way where teams completely overdraft players above consensus. And I understand that consensus only means so much sometimes. Like we're just consensus is wrong in general a good amount of the time, but with these like trendy type of team building and specific uh, prototypes that teams try to make a thing, almost like trying to
Mm-hmm.
make fetch a thing, um, it doesn't work out really that well. That's the most recent example. But with tight ends, we're kind of seeing it. I don't want to say we're not seeing it work out, but specifically with these heavy set tight ends that are not being utilized as your like any real pass catcher of consequence, so to speak, and having them return their value on where they're being drafted, which I would say typically is higher than people would draft them. Darnell Washington, I would say, was probably drafted appropriately value wise, and I
Yeah.
mean he's
In the
probably
third
been
round. Mm-hmm.
the best like as far as this heavy style, just because he's an alien, he's a very
Mm-hmm.
unique type of this tight end. But in that same draft class, and like I pick him out because 2023 was probably the first time I really noticed this was happening.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so you have Darnell Washington, Luke Schoonmaker, and Luke Musgrave. Um, so like that whole grouping, all those guys ended up going, I believe, on day two or in the
Mm-hmm.
second round, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And
Then
um,
Tucker Craft early fourth, that one, right?
Tucker Craft, which I put him a little later only because there was less draft
Yeah.
capital used in that
Mm-hmm.
scenario.
Yep.
Or like not as high of draft capital relative to like where people thought these guys would
Yeah.
go. Following year, Cardinals draft Tip Ryman way
Mm-hmm.
higher than people thought as like a blocking only tight end,
Yep.
and last year even I could be wrong, but I think that last year we didn't really even have many of these guys. Looking at last
Right.
year's draft, it was a lot of these pass catching style tight ends, so it was hard to kind
Yes.
of pick a prototype that fits this because maybe there just weren't these guys in that class.
Mm-hmm.
But then you fast forward to this year and we get Borkercher and Klein in the
Yep.
top 50 or whatever it was, close to the top 50, I
Yep.
think.
Mm-hmm.
And way above guys like Max Clare, way
Right.
above the I'm trying to think of like who else theoretically. Unfortunately, with this kind of stuff, you get so bottled up in so many player names. I can't think of it right now off the top of my head, but Max
Stowers ended
Clare,
up being the second tight end drafted, right? But
yes, yeah.
not by much. But yeah, Claire was the big one. Claire
Yeah,
falling.
Raritan, which I understand the ACLs, but like there's a lot of better just prototypes for tight end. I think that were
Mm-hmm.
in this class when
I'm pulling
those
up last
guys
year's
got
tight end
drafted.
also.
Yeah, and Oscar Delp, Sam Roush, like all these guys were much in general higher on consensus boards than Klein and Borkercher. And I guess my point is that even if it's a small sample size with these tight ends being drafted above consensus that fit this heavy set,
Mm-hmm.
primarily blocking tight end role on these teams, I kind of think there's a little bit of an overreaction happening with these two teams in particular in Houston and San Fran in these specific spots in the draft,
Hmm.
where I think we're gonna look back in a couple years and be like, I understand that we want to get heavier to just kind of counteract the small, fast like defenses that have been built over the past few years to combat the the boom in passing game. But ultimately, the 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 pendulum is going to swing too far to where we're going to end up somewhere in the middle again. And I think that's probably where we end up after next year. Like I bet you this happens for one more year, and we get a couple more of these types of picks in the draft, and then in 2027, after there's enough of a sample size where, hey, it's probably not worth overdrafting these guys. We can probably just sit back and wait and actually get them closer to where they're actually valued,
Hmm.
and it doesn't completely um, hamper your ability to build a roster by spending almost top 50 pick on these guys. So
Yeah.
um, it was just kind of that was one of the big talking points of the draft, and I wanted to get your thoughts on if you think I'm being a little overreactionary with because of us moving into like these more often two tight end sets and just heavy power run schemes where blocking tight ends are very valuable. Like don't get me wrong,
Hmm.
but at what cost, kind of from a
Yeah.
draft standpoint?
I think a few things. I think we knew this was a deep tight end class kind of the whole time, so I don't think we'll see quite the same liftoff, right, in terms of a draft and how many are going on day two, just because I think it was pretty unique all the way through the draft process that we knew it was pretty deep. Um, I do think the Jags jumping the gun on Borkshire probably caused a lot of this. Because we've had these happen in drafts before. Like the safety class this year happened, where it was supposed to be a deep safety class, and everyone was like, "Ooh, there's going to be a run because they're really talented." Well, when it's a deep class, you wait longer. Running back
Right.
last year, right? Same thing. So I think these Titans actually would have gone off the board a little bit later, but because the Jags just went and did what they did, and very clearly were like, "This was the guy we wanted." Had Stowers not gone two picks before that, I wonder if the Jags would have done something different. But when Stowers goes, Sadiq's already gone, obviously. They probably have intel. Like, I mean, think about it. Gladstone coming from LA. The Rams took Max Clare 5 picks later.
Yeah.
So he might have known they're going to take a tight end. They're going to take a guy here. Um, because whenever you could take your fourth tight end, you do it in the second round. And so if that didn't happen, I just wonder if we would have had the run happen as early as it did. Now, in terms of schematically, what's going to happen on the field over the next couple seasons, I think the 12 personnel thing is actually going to go away sooner rather than later because of another trendy thing that's going to be taking place, and that's Eamon Wari playing in the slot. And just like everything, right? Like think about the NBA, like small ball is good, right?
Sure.
Fast and shoot threes. So make your center 6'7" and make your power forward a 6'6" lethal shooter and so on and so forth. And then it's like, but what if those guys could do all the same things, but they were all big?
Right.
So it's like now we play like small ball, but we're back to a 7 footer and a 6'9" guy as our big men doing that.
Right.
So it's like, okay, we're gonna play in 11 personnel, but what if instead of a 5'10" buck 90 pound corner in the slot, our slot is 6'3", 220 pounds.
Right.
So like I'm really interested. I'll talk about a player later, but there's a lot of unique body types in this draft class actually that I'm interested to see. Okay, are we gonna replicate this more? Now we didn't see people in this draft overshoot too much to try and make that happen. But I just wonder mathematically, like, are the Ravens going to be a little more motivated to keep Marlon Humphrey in the slot as a bigger slot now in terms of defending the run? And then when you do that, if you're like, we can't really run out of 12 personnel and we're having a hard time passing out of it because instead of drafting a third receiver in the second round, we drafted a blocking only tight end who's 260 and can't move. And now our passing game is worse. Okay, now all right. Now let's go find like kind of like Kenyon Sadiq.
Yeah.
Let's go find these smaller, faster tight ends, but they will at least block. They will block. So then we'll
Right.
just get back to what a wide tight end was 15 years ago, where it
Right.
was like they're 6'3", they're 245, they block, but then they also run routes.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah,
And
bringing back
then
like the Brent Sellecks and the those kind of guys where which is funny that we're gonna get back to that point I think
that's
as
all
well.
this is, man. It's all cyclical. It's what they, and it's funny because now we've been doing this part of it long enough that we're like actually going to live in a cycle.
Yeah,
Um, and then the other thing was, oh, and the other reason I think it's going to go away is I kind of just alluded to it, but like the blocking tight end's supposed to be great when you get him in the sixth round. It's like,
correct.
oh, and in the sixth round, we got the 6'6", 260-pound guy who was an offensive line. He came in as a freshman to college as an offensive lineman, didn't quite make it, so they converted him to tight end. And like, boom. And now, like, we don't ask him to do anything with skills, and we just, like, let him stand on the end and block some guys. And now that the value has swung to now we got to get that same guy in the second round because he's like 10% more athletic than he was 5 years ago. Now we're going to see a deficit in talent in other parts of the roster, and then I think people are going to swing back and be like, oh, okay, maybe we got a little too excited with the Tip Raymonds and the Roushes and Borkachers and whatever. So,
Yeah, like Roush I don't even mind because it was kind of a Brown where he was maybe valued. Like maybe
hmm
he was maybe not a top 100 player for some people,
hmm
but Klein and like even in, and I mean I'm just a guy who's on his couch, but like even on my big board, like I ended up going to 150. I think I had Klein as like 140 something,
mm
and so like even for me, and Borkircher wasn't even there for me, and so um, Klein, even though I like some of the stuff that he has going for him as a project, I'm just not taking that in the second round. Like, sorry, not sorry.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
especially for when you look at both the teams that did it as these kind of like fringe contenders that are
hmm
both in the same division competing like for a chance to maybe make a playoff run. Like, there's clear other needs that both these teams had that you can address. Whether it was maybe getting another offensive lineman for the Texans, and then even I would say I don't even know if I would go running back for the Jags, but like maybe there's a linebacker do you like there to just
yes.
get more depth and
hmm
instead of saying like oh we'll just take Jalen Husky and it'll be all right. Anyways, but I it was just something that I know that was a big talking point for the NFL world, and I think I just wanted to talk to you about it and make sure I wasn't kind of crazy and thinking that this is probably not going to be something that we see every year going forward for the next 5 seasons. Like it might be over after next year.
Yeah. The simple thing, I mean, if we hopped on some early look ahead boards, there's gonna be like two tight ends that people like, and it'll just kind of fizzle out
Yeah.
from there. All right, this is kind of similar to my first award, so I'm gonna go ahead and hand this out again. This is draft day quotes. Um, I got 52 Tarzans out there. I could use a Jane. Um, and this is for the players that basically the premise of this award is just if a player didn't have a specific position in this draft, they fell. And that was really interesting because of what I just said about like we thought people might chase the Nicki Mawaris. And we had two like pretty cookie cutter examples in Jalen Kilgore literally being at South Carolina. But then even Kamari Ramsey from USC as these bigger guys play safety, but played primarily in the slot, at least for at least 1 year, if not 2 years in their cases. But even Emmanuel McNeil Warren, who, yes, played 75% of his snaps as a box safety, was a guy that a lot of his tape was at free safety. He's 200 pounds. So, okay, don't know if you really want that to be your like primary box safety. And then I know I at least also watch him and say, I think he could be a slot corner. But he hasn't really done a lot of that. And we see him drop to 58. Meanwhile, guys like Tre'Davious Stukes, who is like true slot corner, go ahead of him. And then you look at in terms of guys ahead of Ramsey and Kilgore, Bud Clark, Jacoby Thomas, Genesis Smith, Jaden Canaday, clear defined positions. Um, and then guys like Takario Davis, Dalen Everett go ahead of Keontae Scott, who's a guy that was technically a safety at Miami, but is going to be best as a slot in the NFL. And, then there's linebacker Kyle Lewis, who everyone was sure was going to be a top 100 pick. And he ends up going at what, 138 after Jimmy
130.
Rolder,
Yes. Yeah.
Jimmy Rolder, Wade Woodaz, Caleb Elarms Orr, Kendall Daniels, and Bryce Bodicher all went ahead of Kyle Lewis. I was just like, are we really? Are we really doing that? And it's because he's 6 foot, 220 pounds. And every time you heard his name in the draft process, it's like, well, he might play safety. Except he's never done. Oh, well, actually,
Right.
maybe he's going to be a slot corner. It's like, are we talking about moving a linebacker? Last time I heard move a linebacker to slot corner, we were talking about Isaiah Simmons, and that didn't
Right.
work. Look at Harold Perkins, who was once considered a top 100 player in this process, and I know injuries and everything derailed him, but he became like a slot safety linebacker player, and he goes late in the 6th round. We're talking 2 picks left in the 6th round. Um, and even the Arvell Reese David Bailey discussion, if we want to bring it to the top 5. Now, Arvell Reese doesn't totally fit this because he went to a place, and I think we all kind of got to this point right before the draft. He's a linebacker. And yes, maybe he will play edge rusher at some point, but he's a linebacker, draft him as such. So he got bumped down for David Bailey. But it was just really interesting that I did think we were going to have, like, I thought these guys, Kilgore and Ramsey, the tape says top 100 players. Um, the versatility I thought would make them slam dunk top 100 players. Emmanuel McNeil Warren, top 35 player, at least top 40, 1st round borderline. Kyle Lewis, top 100. All those guys got pushed down like at least a round, if not a round and a half further than I thought they would. Um, and so this was, I got 52 Tarzans out there. I could use a Jane. Like, I got 52 guys who fit a profile, right? Who have an exact position. I could use one guy that I can move around and do stuff with. So it just felt like, for as ballsy as some of these teams were with their drafting, to let these players fall further than I thought they would, kind of felt like they were drafting a little scared. Like, I don't know what to do with them, so I'm not gonna take them.
Yeah,
Were,
there
were
were.
you surprised by these guys falling, and what do you think that was about?
I was because of just we've seen historically that like teams are okay taking even I wouldn't necessarily say taking super high draft capital shots on these guys, but you kind of see these teams willing to do it at like the end of the second, early into the third, and to see along with the other guys you named, like LT Overton is a guy that I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't personally really high on. Like I don't love him,
Mm-hmm.
but to see that body type, right, where it's so many teams we've seen take these body types, it's like I could do something with that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And to see him fall, I think he fell what into the fourth or
Fourth
fifth
round,
round, I
mid
think.
fourth. Mm-hmm.
And usually that's a guy that teams take shots on day two. And then specifically on the defensive side of the ball, like another guy, VJ Payne, who's a crazy athlete, but you're not really sure whether he's going to stick at safety or if
Mm-hmm.
you kind of need to move him at corner, right? He's
Mm-hmm.
a little bit of in between. I think he's probably able to survive at corner, but our team's going to be comfortable doing that. And he goes all the way to the 7th round to the Jets, right? As
Yep.
one of the better athletes in the class, just doesn't
Mm-hmm.
have really a home base. Um, and so I think it was a bit surprising to me. And the reason I think even more so is because you almost didn't see the same effect happen to a couple of these like offensive
Right.
guys that are because the thing with the offensive guys, like the three examples I could pull out just as an example, is like Taylon Green first and foremost, which I know that like sure he's a quarterback, but people don't really think he's going to play. People aren't convinced he's going to play quarterback in
And
the
we'll
league.
get back to Taylor Green, by the way.
Right, right. But two more is like Adam Randall and Josh Cameron. Both are like
Mm-hmm.
former like played running. Well, for Randall, it's like played wide receiver, like big, built like almost not the same size as Derrick Henry, but he's just a larger guy.
Mm-hmm.
And so, who converted to running back, so he's just huge for the running back position. And then Josh Cameron is kind of like the reverse, where he, I believe, started off as like a defensive player, then converted to a running back. Then now he was kind of this running back wide receiver hybrid for Baylor at the time. And those guys actually got drafted a little higher than I thought they would. Like,
Mm-hmm.
which is it's funny that on one side of the ball, teams are almost want to be like risk averse to these because they've seen it play out like the Isaiah Simmons or Zayvon Collins. Not that I'm trying to pick on the Cardinals too much, but that these guys, when you draft them with that high of capital, just don't tend to return because they have such a hard time adapting to finding a home base in the league, right?
Yep.
And I do wonder if some of these guys are just going to be huge values because it is worth still taking shots on a couple of these guys because if you get them in the right situation in the right organization, they do have the ability to develop them. So, Yeah, I was a little surprised by a lot of the defensive guys falling that were more of these tweener positions.
And yeah, the Kilgore and Ramsey were the ones that particularly
Yeah,
were confusing for me. Like, so I'll be really interested in. I mean, I even forget where they ended. Well, one of them ended up in Houston. Ramsey's in Houston.
Ramsey's in Houston. Kilgore went to I think I feel why do I keep thinking everybody goes to Miami?
He went to
Um,
Buffalo. He went to
Buffalo.
Buffalo.
Okay.
And Taron Johnson's gone, but they got the guy from the offer from Atlanta, right?
Yes, they did. So, so
So see, I
that's an
don't know if
interest.
either of those guys are going to play in the slot because there's Petrie for
Right.
Houston, and I mean,
Right.
Houston has so many defensive backs. That was kind of just like a oh, stop the
Like
slide
almost like a
situation for
value pick.
Ramsey.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so do teams just see these guys as safeties, and therefore we saw all the safeties kind of take a hit after downs, right? Thieneman goes 25,
Yeah.
McNeil Warren goes 50. Is this just that teams just see those guys as safety things, which I think is fine in Kilgore's case. I mean, he's not even as fluid as Eamon Worry, and Eamon Worry was a little too tight for me to call him a nickel. But I thought Ramsey was fine. I think Ramsey can play the nickel, but uh, I don't know. I'd have to check back with my notes. Like maybe it just doesn't play the run well enough, so teams are sticking by free. I don't know. We'll see. Um, so yeah, that was just I was a little surprised by that.
Yeah.
All right, where do you want to go next? Do you want to go with your positive teams or your negative teams
Yeah,
as I
we'll
present
go
your award for you?
I I guess go positive.
Okay. All right. So for the next award of things Peyton says to himself in the mirror, contending heavyweight champion of the world, the contenders. Uh, this I haven't sent these pictures to Peyton. I can't wait to do that later. This is just a guy, and none of them are flattering, by the way. This is just a
Great.
guy looking at himself in the mirror with his fists up, like he's a boxer. Just like it's like the poster of the little kitten and there's a
Yes.
tiger behind
Yes.
them, and it's like this
Yes.
is like what this guy is thinking as he's looking at himself, but it's just him looking back at himself. Um,
Oh, jeez.
so, anyways, so this is about contenders. Tell us what you thought about the contenders in this draft.
So I'm sure that maybe like it's not going to surprise people that at some point in this whole discussion we were going to end up talking about teams like the Rams and the 49ers and what they did. But what I wanted to take as a general overarching theme is just the different approaches that overall were taken by the 12 Super Bowl favorites, which I went and pulled them, and it's most of the teams you would think would be there. I think people might be surprised that the Chiefs are as high as they are, but it's pretty much the teams you would think. And I kind of tried to categorize them in different styles of classes, right? I had the ones where it's just kind of not necessarily eat your vegetables, but like
Mm,
either you did your job, came out of the class, like made your team better and filled needs that were not necessarily overdrafted, right? So
mhm.
I kind of had a 5 team group of those guys in KC, Buffalo, Philadelphia, New England, and Baltimore, right? Where I think everybody would unanimously agree, like, okay, they pretty much filled a lot of their needs, right? And it wasn't like they really ever reached for any players. In fact, there's probably a few where you would think, wow, they got a really good value versus consensus on that player, especially with like a team like Baltimore, for instance. Um, and I guess I would say
What were all
Buffalo
five
too.
of those teams? KC, Buffalo, New
KC,
England, Baltimore,
Buffalo, New England, Philadelphia, and
Philly.
Baltimore.
Cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is not to say like those grades are all the same for me. They're not.
Right,
But
right,
it's
right.
just more of the general idea of like,
Strategy.
okay,
Hmm.
yeah. Um, then I kind of took the next group of teams where it's Broncos Chargers where they kind of did what they needed to do even if it wasn't that enthralling in the draft.
Hmm.
Broncos didn't really have that much draft capital after the Waddle trade anyways, but like
Right.
still decent drafts, but for a team like the Chargers, they took Akeem Mesor who might, has some risks that come with him, but ultimately is going to be best for the short term. Like, granted,
Yep.
will both either one of these draft classes really build onto anything long term, TBD, but
Hmm.
they will
Right.
help the team right now in their competing era. Whereas, like those teams I named at first, it's like they did a great job doing both. The next 3 teams is this subsection of I mean, you definitely could have done something different that would have been. It seemed more like they drafted strictly on need and
Hmm.
not necessarily in a way that you're super thrilled about.
Hmm.
Detroit, Seattle, Green Bay were the three that I picked out that kind of fell into that, where you're less enthusiastic than those first seven teams about what they did,
Hmm.
um, as it pertains to their chances this year and how you think how much really they improved specifically for this year
Yep.
in reference to competing for Super Bowl. And then there's the last category, which are the two teams I named at the top, which is like you might as well have just said, oh, I really don't necessarily want to try and win the Super Bowl this year. I'm trying to protect my job for as long as possible and just remain pretty good, but never the best. And that would be the Rams and the 49ers. And which I arguably could have put the 49ers in a different category on their own. But
Hmm.
it's just a matter of how fascinating it was that I don't know that there's that much that separates a team like the Rams, who are the current Super Bowl favorite, from
Hmm.
a team like the Broncos or the Packers, who are at 12th in odds in the Super Bowl,
Hmm.
in the Super Bowl preseason odds. So to think that it's so interesting to me that all these teams that are so close to each other, as far as this is a very definitive competing window where you can go and win a championship, took so different of approaches,
Hmm.
and some to an extent where you're limiting the upside of your team, really, with those bottom five teams that I named
Hmm.
in those
Hmm.
last two categories. So I mean I know that some teams are better at drafting than others, but I do think that like if especially with the Rams, I mean that's been the talking point, just about the argument to kind of almost you have to be aggressive with your first two picks, and instead you draft for the safest, not even safe, but like you just draft for the future in a point in time where like why the hell are you doing that? So
Hmm.
I don't know. I thought I'd get your thoughts on how you felt the contending teams and their different approaches came across from a sense of why you think so many teams took different routes.
Yeah, that's a great question. So Rams and 49ers just screams we have the genius head coaches.
Correct.
So we just
Yeah.
kind of do whatever we're gonna do regardless. I had I feel like an elongated run on the 49ers during the over on Box Score Network YouTube. So check that out on both the NFC West breakdown and the 49ers short that's on there. The Rams got very little attention and are just not about it whatsoever. I cannot explain what the Rams are doing. Um, so stupid. Um, those top teams though, I mean those are just teams Veach, Wolf, DaCosta, Roseman. Those four, I named four of the five GMs. We'll get to
Right.
the other guy. Those are just killer evaluators. You know,
Right.
those
Right.
guys live for the draft. DaCosta comes up under, um, oh gosh,
Newsom.
thank you. Um, so that like the always kill the draft. Like they just know what they want. They know how to get creative. And Buffalo for them, very willing to be aggressive with trades, right? So they create in a sense here where they traded their second round pick for DJ Moore. They traded down three times from the first round to out of the first round and essentially created a new slot for them in the first, second, and third rounds. So creating that extra value through draft pick trades was really huge for them. And I think that mindset of just we're a team that keeps getting to the finish line and can't get over the hump, and it's a lot of times like injury related. We just need more swings. We just need more. We can't walk out of here with sure the 25th pick, but then not again until the 90th pick. Like we need as many top 100 talents as we can, and to even end up with two fourth rounders, I think in the 120s was big for them. Detroit and Seattle kind of throw off my biggest theory for this. I guess not Seattle because they win the Super Bowl, so they're kind of closer to the.
Right.
I'm drawing my stuff here on my notebook. So like Seattle is closer to these guys
Sure.
where they win
Sure.
the Super Bowl. They've got a genius head coach in McDonald. They've got a GM that's feeling himself. So they're a little like our what don't stink. We'll do whatever we want.
Yes, yeah.
Detroit, I would feel like should be closer up to the style of what KC and Buffalo did,
Okay,
and they've
interesting.
done this in the
Okay.
past. But no, I agree. Like that's what I think they should have based on the bucket I want to put them in because the teams that have gotten close to the finish line, right?
Hmm.
And maybe you can argue Detroit's never really gotten that close because what the divisional round
No, it's a conference.
did they
Or
get to a
no,
conference
oh,
championship?
yes, no, 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 no. Divisional
The
against
Commanders game was
yeah,
the furthest they
Commanders.
got, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And that
yeah.
was off a bye. So like,
Right.
have they won? Has this team won a play? This team has won a playoff
They
game, right?
won. Yeah, they won.
Was it the year before and then they lost to the 49ers or something?
Correct. Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
I forget who they beat,
But
but
either but
yes, they
either
did
way,
win
they
a
haven't
playoff
even
game.
gotten to the conference championship, right? So like these teams, Kansas City, Buffalo, Baltimore, Philly, New England have been to a conference championship or a Super Bowl. So there's that
Right.
urgency there. Detroit, for all the excitement, hasn't gotten to even a conference championship, and then their offensive line, their bloodline falls apart. So they have to go attack that. And they do in the first round. And like you said, like pretty chalky, right? Like kind of just got back to a baseline. Green
Correct.
Bay, similar. Lost in the wild card round the last 2 years, need to get back to a baseline. So Cisse, I think is a little bit different, but I highlighted this on YouTube. Like, um, they get an edge rusher and a defensive tackle that are body type and play style going to be the identity that they wanted to be, even if those aren't the guys. Hey,
Hmm.
this is our archetype: 6'4", 260 edge rusher, 6'5", 310 defensive tackle. This is who we are. We have to establish that baseline because we're good. We're getting in the playoffs every year, but we're not getting over. We're not getting to the hump, right? Um, and then Denver and the Chargers. I think they're also just kind of a little like we're gonna do what we're gonna do. Um, like Mesidor, like always felt like it was going to be like a great pick there. Mesidor or Ioane for the Chargers, I think about in the first round. Four offensive linemen for the Chargers. Again, they're kind of Denver's in its own thing because they limited draft capital as you said. Chargers are a little closer to Detroit and Green Bay where it's like we just have to keep maintaining, and it's because we got hit with so many injuries. So yeah, I agree with the buckets you're saying, and I think it's that level of probably where you've been, right? And who
Yeah.
you really are. Like
Yeah.
the Rams and the 49ers have gotten really close. The Rams have made it, but they have geniuses. Those top five teams,
Yeah.
genius GMs, need to get over the hump this year. And then these other teams are just trying to like maintain and hope this year they kind of break into that next year.
Yeah, it isn't necessarily like I know I threw like basically like 12 half a third of the league at you essentially, and but it's more so like the reason I wanted to discuss it is because the I think it's fascinating that even though all these teams in theory as of right now, right, seem so close to each other relative to like their ability to
Hmm.
compete for a Super Bowl, just how many different mentalities there are. Whereas in
Yes.
theory, general public would think that all of these teams should be hyper aggressive to try and
Hmm.
do do what is ideal to win a Super Bowl right now. And I think that's like I do think you can do both, like those teams at the top have done. I would say, but
Yep.
um, I think the different philosophies of each of the front offices that we kind of touched on was a very fascinating touch point of this draft, considering where the odds lie preseason. Because I think this is, in my opinion, like granted, I say in my opinion, I should say if we were to go back and like look at the preseason odds of the top 12 teams at any point for a Super Bowl, I would think that there's probably not 12 teams that are that close in odds historically.
Hmm.
Being like the 12th lowest team and still being like 21 is pretty low odds relatively. Usually it's like coming around like 30 or something like that. So it was just an interesting um, observation. Just the fact that not every single one of those teams did uh, what what was be deemed as the best move from a draft standpoint to win the Super Bowl this year. That's really all it boiled down to, and I understand that's ultimately because first off, like it wasn't coincidence, like you said, that like the top five teams that I named or like the teams that are in that bucket just happen to have like five of the eight best GMs in the league, right?
Yeah.
There's a reason why they're there. But anyways, I just figured it was a good thing to talk about, considering that even if it doesn't seem so far away right now, I'd be really interested to see if once we get to, the end of the season next year, this kind of like the buckets that I picked out are
Yep.
almost how we end up towards the end of the season, right? Like if the Rams and the 49ers end up being massive disappointments, maybe not massive, but like relative disappointments because maybe they could have done a lot more for their roster through the draft and didn't really do enough. And, let's say the 49ers maybe miss the playoffs and the Rams are, instead of being, you know, as close to Seattle, maybe they're kind of like barely a wild card team.
Hmm.
I think that we'll kind of look back at this and be like and criticize it in a way even more so than we are right this second. So
Last quick thing. Don't even
yeah,
respond to this, but um, Brad Holmes has two-time Executive of the Year winner, right? The year they made the jump and went from no playoffs to conference championship was 2023 when they had the Jahmyr Gibbs, Jack Campbell, Brian Branch, Sam Laporta draft where he goes nuts, right? After that, man, I know they've moved up like in the mid rounds kind of recklessly, but they haven't hit a lot. Terry and Arnold and Ennis Rakestraw in 2024 because what lost them that playoff game was bad coverage. So
right.
they were like, let's get a couple corners. And then after the 2024 season, when they lose to the Commanders, they go and they draft Tate Rutledge in the second round and then Tyler Williams in the first round. It's like, oh, trenches. Those guys got hurt. Those guys are getting older. Let's hit the trenches. And then this year, oh, we need a new tackle and we need an edge rusher because we haven't had one in 5 years next to Hutchinson. So yeah, man, after that one crazy one where he had to draft like the five teams you mentioned at the top, it's kind of been a little vanilla, other than let me trade a bunch of picks for a third round wide receiver nobody knows. All right, moving on. I actually do want to stick with one of these teams though. I have one team specific draft that I want to do, and it's the look, Jeff. Every year, someone comes out of this looking like a donkey. Can you hear me, Jeff? Yeah, I hear you, Sonny. Good, because I think that could be you. Award. And I hate to say it, but it's going to the Kansas City Chiefs, man. I'm a little worried. I'm a little worried. I see the vision. I
Huh.
understand what they're doing. I
Okay.
understand what they're doing. I'm not gonna walk out of this in 5 years if they don't win a Super Bowl and be like, man, those idiots. I knew it. I knew it. They should have done this. But to not go with offense at any point until the fifth round, to not take an offensive lineman at any point, um, defense for four straight picks was just not the route I expected for them. So they go and they pay the running back in free agency, and then the draft, and they completely like not just draft defensive players, but like they kind of clear out a lot of defensive names. All these guys leaving free agency. They trade Trent McDuffie, and then they go out and they get Mansour Delane, R. Mason Thomas, Peter Woods. Um, is it Jordan Kennedy?
Jaden Kennedy.
Jaden Kennedy, thank
Yeah.
you. Who like might be their starting slot corner now, and like again, guy with a clear defined role plays the nickel. Um, so here's what this is. I went back and I tracked because DVOA goes back to 2018 when they won that Super Bowl, right? Or when they made the conference championship game against the Patriots. They ever since from 2018 to 2022, they were top three in offensive DVOA, and at best they finished 12th in defensive DVOA, but more they were in the like bottom half of the league, 16, 22, 23 range. In those 5 seasons, won two Super Bowls, lost one Super Bowl, lost two conference championship games. From 2023, and then you get into 2023 and 2024, seventh in defensive DVOA and 12th in defensive DVOA, but down to eighth in offensive DVOA. But they made two straight Super Bowls, winning one, losing one. And then last year, back down to 16th in DVOA in defensive DVOA, all the way down to 12th in offensive DVOA. They missed the playoffs. So now you're looking at the Chiefs, and you're like, well, I can't get to top five offense and top, let's say, 12 defense in the same year, right? So what we have to pick a route. Do we try to get back to that first era of the Chiefs dynasty where we're high octane offense and we go, go, go? Or do we go back to that second era that we were just in and get a running back to supplement the offense a little more, which we haven't had during that era, and then try to get this defense back? Where can we push? Can we get that defense from 16 to 10? Or is it easier to get that offense from 12 to 6? and they opted for defense, which, man, is just a little strange when you got Patrick Mahomes. But again, I get it. He's 30. He's coming off a torn ACL. Travis Kelsey's older. This might not be the time to say, let's try to push all the chips in on the offense. This defense was seventh just 2 years ago. The offense was not top three in 4 years. So we were more recently this. Now we're clearing the deck of the defense and we have to start it over from scrap. But that was kind of what we did in 2023 when we brought in all those young guys. So again, I get it. I get the decision they made. But then I want to take you through, would Fano or Tyson even, with maybe a Denzel Boston or a Jeremy Bernard, or getting a Max Clare somewhere, or keeping pick 74 and using that on, I don't know, pick an edge rusher. There was still some edge rushers there. Um, Prioritize. I just wonder if they're gonna look at this at the end and be like, man, we kind of should have just gone with what our original identity was, who Patrick Mahomes is, and really taking a look at, because at this point, is the offense gonna go forward or is it gonna go backwards? And I can't help but think about the Warriors, and they have their run. They win their 2015 championship, then they have the KD era, and then they go through this run of high draft picks. And we get to the was it the 2020 draft or 2021? Anthony Edwards, like
Yeah,
we could
yeah,
get LaMelo
2021.
Ball, and we could
Right.
kind of play what we've been playing, where it's fast and it's high octane. He kind of does what these guys do. Or we go James Wiseman and have something we haven't had before and get a 7 foot center and try to play defense and open things up vertically down the. And that's the route they took. And man, it didn't go well. And then the next year they have a couple high picks again, and they have Kaminga and they have Moody, and that didn't work out either. And now they're sitting here at the end of the Steph era, towards the end of the Steph era, and they're like, we might not win. We probably won't win another championship. And I'm just like, is this going to be that turning point for the Chiefs? They had a pick. They had the ninth overall pick. They traded for the sixth overall pick. And they have this choice of which way do we go? And they choose defense. And yes, you could tell me like, oh, they should have done both. Like, but I don't know. I like the all in on one side approach when you had the draft capital they had. But Ben and I said it on Thursday. We mocked a lot of good, interesting, helpful players to the Chiefs at 74 over the course of draft season, and they traded it away to go get a corner. I don't think I would have done that part. And then I think that, but that was their identity for the draft. They wanted to get CB1. They wanted an uber talented defensive tackle. They wanted one of the speediest edge rushers. And they wanted a slot corner. So I just don't. I think we could look back on this and be like, yeah, that was the beginning of the end. That was the James Wiseman. Um, how'd you feel? So you put them in that top bucket of like aggressive, doing stuff, had a good job. I mean, I still gave them a B minus. They got good
Yeah.
players.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and again, I understand the vision. I get it. I see where it'll work or it could work. But do you think it was the right move? Do you think they should have gone defense or offense? How did you feel about that decision?
So let me be clear, because I know that people are probably going to listen to that last segment and be like, Peyton thinks that the Chiefs can win this. No, I don't think the Chiefs can win the Super Bowl. I'm just saying, in Vegas odds, they're like six, which I just still don't get why
I'll
they're
say
there.
it. They can win the Super Bowl. They have Patrick Free Mahomes. I'll say it.
Okay,
Mansoor Delaney's
sure,
Pat Surtain. Peter Woods is
but
Chris Jones next to Chris Jones.
but I guess I was just putting them in the bucket of these team, like the different. Anyways, we already did that.
You're good. You're fine.
Pertaining to
You're
the
safe.
the Chiefs, like, and what I actually think they did here, and why I even and you're saying that you think they're going to come out on the other side of this, or that there is a roadmap to them coming out on the other side of this, and like you said, we're going to think that this is kind of where the Chiefs took a turn, not really for the worst, but just where they could have really maximized a
They could
good
have
draft
pushed
that
forward, and
right.
instead they just kind of like, what if Delane is just good?
Yeah.
What if
I
Peter Woods actually is the 29th pick in the draft and not the top 10 pick like we thought he was at the beginning of the season?
right.
Um, and
I
they just
I
kind of peter out for a while.
I think that here's my thing. I think that they're self-aware enough, and maybe they're not. Maybe I'm giving the Chiefs, like Brett Veach and Andy Reid, way too much credit. I think they're self-aware enough to realize this is probably not the year. And I know that that sounds crazy because like they're sixth or whatever, seventh in Super Bowl odds, and as long as you have Patrick Mahomes, you can always win a Super Bowl theoretically, right? But really, if they're gonna try and do the, I don't want to say the Brady thing, but let's just say like, you know, they're gonna try and do the this is the second chapter of Patrick Mahomes' career, right?
Hmm.
You kind of have to have a couple years there where it's just not you know, you might make the playoffs, but it's just not there for you, right?
Hmm.
And ultimately, the way that they got there, right? And I'm not trying to say that they have to, you know, have the same blueprint of drafting that the Patriots did, because it's a very different era that we're in now compared to then, even if it was like a decade ago. You do kind of have to change a little bit of who you are, um, in regards to team building, a little bit to evolve. As opposed, and I understand that you know the Chiefs that have won the Super Bowls. There's kind of two different versions. There's the high flying offense version, and then there was the you know these top 10 defense and pretty good offense version, right?
Hmm.
With this draft, I think what I like about it and I guess it's even if it's not what they typically do, I at least like that they are deciding to shift the direction of what the team is going to be built like going forward. Because really, I guess Delane is probably the only guy that has some similarity, but they haven't really had that just true outside lockdown corner for a long time. It doesn't feel like, right?
That one
But
year of L'Jarius Sneed, and that was it.
right, but not a guy who is on that level of you know a I don't want to say certain, but like a step below that even. You know maybe even like a Sauce Gardner, so to
Sauce. Hmm.
speak. Yeah, but with all the other picks, I think it's a matter of Peter Woods is not the size, you know, measurables wise type of defensive tackle they would typically take. And I think that getting a guy who's a little bit quicker, a little like theoretically twitchier, um, than the type of defensive tackle next to Chris Jones is, I think it's a good idea personally. Getting and like as far as Spags' defense, like these are not the guys that they typically draft. Like they don't draft these super speedy edge rushers. They draft like George Karlaftis, who's just you know, and it's totally opposite of what we've typically seen the Chiefs do from a defensive standpoint.
Hmm.
And to me, I hate to like zag just for the sake of zagging because I don't want to make it sound like I'm doing that.
Zach away.
But I kind of do think you have to have like a differentiating of styles to shift into a new era of the team. To me, like I really don't believe in the idea that like you have your franchise quarterback and yada yada. He's going to be there for however you know another 8 years. I don't know how long Patrick Mahomes is going to play, but in theory, you have to continue evolving. And I think we've seen that, as, especially over the last like 3 seasons, we've seen that it's worked less and less and less. The same style of team building that they've kind of settled for. It's felt like right.
Yeah.
And I do like I said, I think if I think they're as smart as they think they are, I think there is some self awareness to them that they do realize that this is probably a gap here. And that's probably not what Travis Kelsey and Chris Jones want to hear, but that's the reality of the situation, in my opinion. And I think that given that context, and that's like just my average Joe belief over here of what their mentality behind going into this draft class and the way that we see it played out ended up. I like what they did because I do see it as them making a statement that this is the type of defense and the type of team that we're going to build going forward, even if it is a shift from what made us elite prior. That's it's maybe it's kind of a little bit of a shot in the dark and it's me projecting a little bit as opposed to going off of what we know about the Chiefs. But to me, it's a worthy shot to take this chance to do this in a year where I didn't really consider them to be true contenders, anyways.
I just really wonder. I was just mapping it out. I just really wonder if Maui Noah, Denzel
Mm-hmm.
Boston, Eli Stowers, Take your pick of nickname, future Brazel or Hurst at 74. And then in the fourth and fifth rounds, some of the defensive players that were available, Kilgore and Ramsey that we talked about,
Hmm.
Joshua Josephs, who I really liked, um, in the fifth round, Chandler Rivers, if you wanted a true like inside slot corner type of guy. There weren't a lot of outside corners. So again, if that's their vision, they need, and like you just said, like, hey, we haven't had this before. Let's give Spags this toy because that on its own could take us from six. But you could even have done. You could have taken out the Denzel Boston pick and plugged in Avion Terrell or Colton Hood at that point. And those guys aren't Mansour Delane, but are they appreciably different? Like if Delane is sauce, then like this is a different conversation. And I don't have a full cornerback ranking in my head or anything, but I don't think
Nor
he's.
do
I
I,
don't. I
but
don't. I don't. I don't. I don't know. I'd have to noodle on that. I really like Delane. This isn't even a Delane thing. This is just a identity thing and what they're doing.
right, right.
And if you told me we walked out of their draft with Maui Noah, Boston, Stowers, and Hurst or Brazel, and the Chiefs were like, "Oh, we're gonna be the seventh best offense again," and we let all those other guys go in free agency, and we added Josephs and Rivers and Ramsey to this defense, and we're gonna bring them in and just let them kind of do that. Then okay, I'm interested. I'm really
I do think okay. I will to your point though. I will say because the reason why I'm not like truly sold on them being a contender is because I'm just not a believer in this offensive line being like that good. I've seen like some Chiefs fans are kind of like, it's fine, like don't worry about it, it's gonna
I
be
got a
okay.
few comments on YouTube that the offensive line is fine. And like this is me, which I found out I'm apparently the world's biggest Jalen Moore fan. Like I like Jalen Moore, but I'm just like I'm trying to also take a little bit of humble pie on. Well, if everybody else thinks this guy is just a dude, then like what would Maui Noah be, right? What,
Right,
what would we
right,
look like with that?
right. That are now that like that proposition of like taking Maui Noah and staying at 9 and then having that extra draft capital, that I
Keeping
can kind of
74, 74
yeah,
was
yeah,
big.
that I can kind of get on board with as far as a better value proposition. But I guess it's just a matter of like I don't. I, what'd you give it? Like a B minus?
B minus.
Like
Hmm.
I'm not gonna act like I love the whole thing
Right,
entirely, but it's
right.
probably like a B plus for me, which is
Yeah.
like I don't know. We're kind of picking nits a little bit, but
Yeah, it's not even
but
so much about the grade because again, the
no, no, no,
grade
no.
is about like plan, good players, decent
Right,
value
right,
more than it is it what I would have done? I gave
right,
several
right.
B's and B pluses and literally said in the videos and written down on
Yeah,
NFLmocks.com like this is not what I would have done. So
yeah.
but like I get it. I see what they're doing.
Now let me ask you one last thing before we like move on to I guess whatever next award we're going to. Is there any part of you that thinks that because I felt this way watching a lot of last season for them, and I know they signed Kenneth Walker, so I'm sure the run game is probably going to help alleviate a lot of the offensive struggles they had. But do we not like? Does it not seem like maybe it's just that Andy Reid's kind of losing the fastball? Like I don't want to like get into trying to replace Andy Reid necessarily,
Right.
but I wonder if Veach went into this draft and it's kind of like we don't want to just kind of give Andy the car keys to do the same thing he's been
Mm,
doing for the last ever so many years that's steadily decreased in
yep.
efficiency. I gotta kind of see some proof of really like good sea changes in offensive philosophy
Yeah.
before I'm just gonna dump a bunch of draft capital into this offense. And I wouldn't be surprised if that's also part of the reason why they did this.
I think that's really a really smart observation because if you look at the other things that they've done, Nagy out, enemy back in,
Yeah.
pay Ken Walker. Our guy Ben Parker will tell you that Andy Reid hasn't liked to run the ball in 20 years.
Right.
But then you go pay Ken Walker all that money.
Right.
You bring enemy the former running back to the Chiefs. You kick out Nagy, the
Hmm.
quarterback guy. I I I, I think that's correct.
Yeah.
I'm sitting here. I think that's more than a theory. I think that's correct. I think you're
Yeah.
right there.
Yeah. And I know
Um,
that, and I know it's late draft capital, but even getting a guy like Emmett Johnson, who's going to be like who
Hmm.
is really similar to that Jerick McKinnon role that because I believe Bieniemy had some overlap with McKinnon, right?
Yeah, I'm sure.
And
Yeah.
having this like primary pass catching running back
Hmm.
weapon, who
Hmm.
which that's kind of what Emmett Johnson like he can run like between the tackles, but he's prolific as a pass catching guy
Hmm.
out of this draft, and like get them spending a fifth round pick, which is not nothing for
Right.
running backs at this point in time, especially if you have a designated role for him. I think that
Hmm.
having that combo of him and then even Brashard Smith from last year
Right.
is another point where it's like we're gonna have some different looks in this offense. Trying to get some kind of philosophical juice from
Yeah.
a offensive design standpoint. And like I said, I just think that they're like you, and I'm glad that you kind of. I'm not just making it up in my head that that's part of the reason why they drafted the way they did this year.
Yeah. And the Emmett Johnson thing, I actually me missed not only anti running back, but especially anti mid round running back.
Yeah.
I actually didn't hate that for them because again, clearly this is what they're gonna do. They're gonna run the
Right.
ball and play defense. Ken Walker has always been in a committee. Well, if you're gonna commit to that, yeah, you better get another running back in.
Right.
So, all right. Enough on the Chiefs. All right, Payne, let's get to your last award. I really like picking your awards. I might just take this
Keep
job
doing
from you.
it.
Yeah. All right. This is so again, these awards are things Peyton says to himself when he looks in the mirror. And this is a what a tank award. And this is a guy, it's funny, his bicep is actually covered up by the Steelers logo, which take it how you will. Um, but he's taking a really bad gym selfie with like an iPhone 4, um, with a really, you can't actually see it in this picture entirely, but a really bad haircut too, and a really ugly
Great.
JCPenney tank top. So, yeah, unflattering pictures, I promise. But tell us what your tanking award is about.
So my tanking award is really about looking a little bit of like a little ahead into next year's class. Next year, that's been like every year we do this right after the draft. It's like, oh, you think this one was good? Like wait until next year's draft, right? And we've done that, but we've done that for like 3 years. It
We
feels
were
like
right one time, and it was after the Kenny
yeah,
Pickett draft because that was just
yeah,
so terrible, and we knew CJ
yeah,
Stroud was coming out. Bryce Young wasn't even really like a huge factor in that at that point. Neither was Anthony Rich.
right,
It was like hold out for CJ Stroud, and that
right.
was the whole thing.
But it seems like this, the 2027 class is being, already deemed as like maybe the best class of the 2020s even before it's happened, right? And especially from a QB standpoint. I hate to just like turn it into a quarterback conversation because I think there's a lot more to it. But with these teams in particular, like there was a thought that there is a designated list of teams that are very obviously going to be even after this draft, like people think are okay, they're definitely going for a quarterback next year, right?
Hmm.
I look at the teams that like I try to identify the teams that I think definitively could be in the running for a quarterback next year at some point in next year's class. Um, and I mean like going, Browns, Jets, Cardinals are like the three that everybody
Hmm.
even before like even when the season ended last year and they didn't end up with the number one pick, we're like, okay, well they're going to shoot for,
Yep.
QB the following year. And then there were four other teams that kind of intrigued me. Like the Falcons, I think theoretically could be in
Hmm.
that bucket of teams. The Dolphins, obviously the roster is just not that good.
Hmm.
Even with the Malik Willis contract structured in a way where they could theoretically, just do the thing where they sacrifice him to the
To the dead cap
what's it called?
gods of the NFL.
Take him
Yeah.
out to the pasture and just whatever, like sacrificial lamb.
Old Yeller
Um,
him.
yeah. And then there's the Steelers and the Colts who are kind of in peculiar situations where they they have good enough rosters to like be able to compete for the division, but if something happens to either A, their aging quarterback from an injury standpoint, or B, the quarterback who's coming off an Achilles injury, things start to get a little hairy from as far as how competitive they're going to be. Even if
Are things hairy for the Steelers and their quarterback situation where they're pulling out um, contract tags that haven't been
right
used in 50
in like
years
a long time.
to keep the 43-year-old drug addict on the roster? Is that what we're talking about?
I
That's
I
the
would think
situation you're alluding to?
I would think that we know a lot about football and the way that it works, I have never in my life heard of that tag that they used. It's like, what is the technical name for it?
I gave up looking for it because I made myself mad describing it. I was just scrolling through my notifications on Twitter.
Anyways,
Hang on, I'm right here. I'm
I
about
know
to
I
tell
know
you.
Schefter tweeted it and I read it and I was like, I'm sorry, what? It's like right of refusal tag,
Yes,
right?
first right of refusal. Yeah,
First right of refusal tag, which I was like, what is this court? Like, what are we doing here?
and also just
Anyways,
like the thing about like now, basically because he still hasn't signed and it's been and the
right,
draft has happened. So in theory, that means he could sign somewhere else, and the Steelers would not get a comp pick.
right,
So
but
this is
they could
basically
match
just
it.
like we could now get a
Yeah,
comp pick
yeah,
if you're
yep,
not on the team next year and you go
yep,
somewhere else.
right.
And it's just like we really don't want you to leave. Here's a raise, and also we would need something back for you if
Right.
you were to stop.
But okay,
It's,
so
anyways,
so
okay,
my
yeah.
point of naming like these 7 teams, those are the ones that I really think like
Mhm.
could be in the QB market going into the 2027 class. The thing is, with some of the, okay, I'll single out the Dolphins. The Dolphins just don't have a good enough roster. They're probably going to be really bad, like just straight up, and that's okay. But with the Cardinals, the Jets, and the Browns, okay, my thing is, like I really liked, especially the Jets and the Browns. Like Cardinals, I thought they did
Mhm.
okay. You know, we can talk about the Jeremiah Love pick a little bit, but overall, I think they did okay. Um, but the Jets and the Browns, I was like, holy crap, you guys just completely remade your team in 2 years in a way that I didn't like even think you guys were going to be able to do. To a point where, and the reason I throw the Cardinals in here is because the Cardinals kind of did a version of that last year and just kind of added on to it by
Mhm.
getting the best player in the draft for a lot of people that can single-handedly like not I won't say single-handedly win games, but like he can single-handedly be responsible for putting more points on the board to maybe win you a couple games just by a
Who are
few
you talking
scoring
about?
plays. Jeremiah Love.
Jesus Christ. Okay, all
Anyways,
right.
my point.
I was
I'm
like, who is
just
he? Who is he talking? What?
hear me out.
What?
Hear me out. So
Jeremiah
but
Love.
really, like I said, this is mostly for the Jets and the Browns. The Cardinals are kind of like right behind them in this regard.
Mhm.
Are they? Is the teams themselves like? I really start to think like, are they gonna be bad enough to be in the top three?
Are the
Right,
Nets too good? Coming
right.
up after the commercial break.
Like just especially with Cleveland. Like Cleveland's the one that I think of, right? Where
Well,
as
Cleveland you
bad
don't have
as
to worry about because Deshaun Watson is leading the QB room right now.
well, okay, but even then, I mean, last year the QB room was, I don't know what you want to make of it, but it wasn't good.
It,
And
it it's gonna be it. They will be
but they,
fine in the sense
my
that they will be
okay,
terrible.
but they ended up with the sixth pick, right?
Hmm. It's true.
You're still like, yes, there's quarterbacks in that range.
Are you confident that Mongen is the same coach as Stefanski and whoever the defensive coordinator is who Jim Schwartz is?
Fair point. I'm thinking of this from a roster construction
Okay.
standpoint. To be fair, I guess my point is I'm not confident that those 3 teams that we thought were like, okay, these are like it's the bottom 4 teams that are going to be there are the Dolphins, Cardinals, Jets, and Browns, right?
The Jets
Like I
might make
think
the playoffs. I
my
was hoping to
point
just
being
kind of squeak that in there. I wasn't sure if you were going to hear
my
it.
point being that like I just wonder if the teams are going to be as bad as we think they are that we thought the Dolphins I will say, but like even if yes, it's Jacoby Brissett. Like Jacoby Brissett was pretty good last season, and honestly, the defense had a few
Right.
really important pieces like Walter Nolan. And I forget who. I know there were some other injuries on that side of the ball
Hmm.
that they were counting on to like really improve the defense last year. Um, and I guess my thing is that I think there's a realistic place where we get into pre-draft season next year and we have the Browns still at like number 6. We have the Cardinals at
Hmm.
like 5, let's say. And then that's the Jets are probably the one that I'm most optimistic about just because I think that they have done an incredible job of rebuilding both sides of the ball. And let's say the Jets are like 11, pick 11, right? If these are 3 teams that we think are going to need quarterbacks, like we're going to see a ton of like we're going to see movement up the board in some
Hmm.
form or fashion. Like there's and yes, the QB class is deep, but I wonder if it's not going to be just as cut and dry as like, oh yeah, these teams are going for quarterback without a doubt, and that means
Yep.
that they're just going to be flat out like 3-win teams,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
I do not think that's how this is going to pan out because I think that those teams, the rosters are just too, they're not 3-win team rosters in my
Hmm.
opinion. Cardinals, maybe you can probably, I guess, are the closest to talking me into that,
Hmm.
but I think it'll be fascinating to look, in, I guess, what would it be like 9 months, theoretically,
Hmm.
8 months, and the season's over, and we're immediately getting to the point where we're starting to hear, okay, well, what is it going to cost for the Brown staff to move up from 6 to 2 in order to get the quarterback that they want, right?
Right.
I think that there's just going to be a lot more of movement required for these teams because they've just done so well in the last two drafts.
Yeah, it's usually just think about who could end up with the first overall pick. It's usually like a pretty surprising team, right?
Yeah, like
Um,
The Falcons would not shock me if they end up with the first pick. Just like a team like
Fancy
that.
to offensive line is changing. Whatever's gonna end up happening with the defensive situation.
Like
Um,
there's talent on the roster, but there are some like clear red flags with that team.
I'm
And
trying to look at all the teams that
Miami,
finished third in their division.
yeah,
I
Miami's
mean,
one.
Miami was third. Washington. I mean, I know we like what Washington did this offseason,
Yeah,
but based on what the front office is doing with in terms of the coaching staff, because the thing is, this will be a fun summer project.
yeah,
I feel like coaching situation on the surface is what you can point to for the first overall pick teams before the roster.
it's fair. That's a fair point. Yeah,
Because
fair,
obviously,
fair
like the
enough.
Raiders, we thought the roster, and that's why it's usually pretty surprising teams, right? It's usually the
Right.
teams that have the 5.5 to 7.5 win total in the
Mm,
preseason odds that end up with the first overall pick, and it's because the roster is actually pretty good, and then you get to the season, you're like, oh, this coaching is a mess, and that's why the Jets this year with Aaron Glenn, the Raiders
yeah.
this year with Pete Carroll. Um, it's why the Browns aren't actually in the top five all the time, and it's because they had Stefanski and Schwartz for a
Right.
long time running things. I agree with you. I think like the Cardinals and Dolphins feel like first time head coaches. We're not sure how it's gonna go. The Cardinals have like I forget what number I said, 20, 21 or 22 players still on the roster that they've drafted in the last 3 years. Maybe it's
Yeah.
more than that, 25, 26. So like that could go really good or that could go really bad. So we'll
Right.
see. Dolphins obviously is like a bunch of rookies and a first time head coach. So like that'll be interesting. The thing is the Jets have the Colts pick, so if it ends up being the Colts, like the Jets
Right.
just have two
Right.
top 10 picks,
Right.
plus the Cowboys pick at 25 or whatever it's going to be. So, um, if it is one of these non-quarterback teams, yeah, yeah, Falcons make sense too.
I guess my
The
point is
Cardinals
that
when
like
Jeremiah Love does the Chris gets the Chris Paul meme, and it's like Jeremiah Love rips off second 75-yard touchdown of the game, and the Cardinals are now down 42
41 to
to
14.
14. Yeah.
I guess it's just interesting because like you said, I think it's we go into the following year, especially like once
Yeah.
we identify the teams that need quarterbacks, especially is the one that always stands out, and it's just the fact that we're going into a really good, what we think is a really good quarterback
Hmm.
class, like one of the best we've seen in the decade, and we don't know if the teams that are definitively going to be in the quarterback market are going to be in position to just like sit and be able to just sit pretty and know by the end of the season, oh yeah, we have the second overall pick. We're gonna get one of Archer, Dante Moore, and it'll be fine. But
Yeah.
instead, it's like there's gonna have to be some movement that takes place before they can solidify their place. And it also means that like what is that going to end up costing? Because we really haven't seen like heavy movement like that required
Hmm.
for quarterbacks in what feels like, I guess, maybe since Bryce Young. It's
Right.
like the last one I can think of.
Yep.
And there was a pretty hefty price whenever that trade happened. So
Hmm.
I'm curious if we see not only like one, but almost like three or four of those trades happen
Yeah.
all in the same year, which I don't know that that's ever taken place before.
Yeah. I mean, shoot, man. If the Jets don't get the first overall pick, And we'll see when we get there if we feel like there's an appreciable difference between anybody, 1-2 or 2-3 or 1-5, whatever it is. But if they did all this and they had the offseason they had and the draft that they had, and then they're not willing to offer like all three first round picks, right? Like, what was it all for? What was it
Right.
all for?
Which I totally agree with you. Yeah.
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 And yeah, if you're Miami, you're like, I can make 20 picks again next this year. Like, yeah, let's freaking do it. Let's go. Go from 1-3 and
Right.
pick a million times. All right, should we call an early shot? Who's gonna have the first overall pick next year?
I will go with Atlanta. I think there's enough there, and not say anything against Stefanski. I like he was at one point a awesome coordinator for us in Minnesota. I've always liked his philosophy from an offensive standpoint. I always thought he got a bad rep in Cleveland. But with the quarterback like room that they have currently, we've we have reason to believe that there's concern between Penix's injuries and the I would say like pretty low ceiling of what Tua can be offensively.
Hmm.
But in addition to that, the offensive line all of a sudden has instability. And I know they signed oh
Jawan
gosh.
Taylor.
Yes, thank you. They signed Dewan Taylor, which is a nice job to replace McGarry after his abrupt retirement. But um, and you still have the James Pierce thing lying around, which I guess he's maybe gonna play. I don't really know yet,
Yeah,
but there's too much to me instability with those things that I named for me to feel confident that they are going to be not be a how do I say this? There's enough concern for me to think that they are not going to be like a really like a competitive team.
hmm
I think that which I don't know what their win total is right now, but I would venture to say that they're probably somewhere in like the 7.5 win total, which, like you said, is kind of the bucket that we're shopping in
Yep.
for the surprise team that ends up with the number one pick. Steelers are another one where it's just that those are the two teams that stand out. If I'm not going to go with the obvious picks of like the
hmm
Dolphins, um, just because if we're at a point where we're starting Drew Aller, in week 6, then things have gone horribly wrong
What are you
for
talking
the
about?
Steelers.
Drew
So
Aller by week 6, man. They'll get to 12 wins that way. Um, all right, I'm definitely gonna change my mind on this, but I'm gonna say I could cheat and just say the Jets will have it because they'll trade up to some team that I'm not gonna
yeah, yeah,
name. Um, I don't want to put it on the Jets because I'm waiting for the Geno turnaround, man. Uh, I'll go. I will take one of the easy ones, and I'll just say the Cardinals. I'll say Cardinals. I think
okay.
Cardinals. I
I
think
think if I were to
I think
take
as the one
yeah,
team that made no trades with any, like they just sat and
yeah,
picked
it's fair.
their 7 picks. It just feels like they're like I literally said they're on auto draft. Like they're just like call us when we have the first pick in
Yeah,
2027. We'll make it happen.
which is a little funny to me because when Monty first kind of came on board, he was this like oh, I'm gonna move
the
up and
the
down the
viral
board, like
clip of him
yeah,
making all the
yeah,
trades. That was
yeah,
and then
and
we just all assumed he was good at that point. And then this
yeah.
time he was
Now,
like, I'm
now
good.
you just say whatever. I'll just sit and
His
pick
owner
and
made him
yeah,
take
yeah.
a running back, and he was like, I don't want to play with you. I'm taking my ball and going home. I'm not gonna make any phone calls. Screw you.
But if I were to pick one of the easy ones, I would pick the Dolphins. To be fair, but I feel like they're probably the favorite if I had to
Yeah,
like look at odds. But yeah. Anyways, I guess it was just like it's not as cut and dry as like the bad teams that we thought were going to be bad and tanking for quarterbacks are actually going to end up being bad because I don't really think that's the case. That's all.
right. Yep. All right, let's get to our last one here. My last award. Another one from Coach Penn, new head coach of the Cleveland Browns as of 2014 in this scenario. Dude, did you see the whole pick thing? I'm showing the graphic, giving away my award and not even presenting it. Did you see the rumors of draft day two?
Heck no. What is that happening?
Goodell came on the stage at one point and announced a pick to the Browns and said it was not part of the draft. Said it was for something else.
What? No.
And a very small niche part of
No.
NFL Twitter was like,
Hold
is
on.
Sonny back at it? Draft day two coming? I can't believe we made it this whole pod and I didn't say anything.
There's no way that got greenlit.
Dude, it's become such a like cult
Maybe I don't
classic
know.
at this point. I swear,
Okay,
man, people
okay. You know what? If I will say, I guess maybe nowadays in the streaming era,
straight to streaming, yeah.
straight to streaming, I could see it happening.
Dude, I would drop $40 so fast to go see that in theaters, especially if they did like a double showing, right? Go for both parts. Oh my God, are you kidding me?
If you thought that there
Starts with
was,
Brian Drew's retirement ceremony and they're drafting the next quarterback. Get
I
out of here,
feel,
man. We
I
should
feel
write this
like
movie. Let's write this
I,
movie next pod.
there's, that's got a rival as far as ratio, gender ratio in a movie theater. It's got to be up there for male dominant audience as far
I'm
as
trying to
I would love to.
at what point did Fast and Furious completely just go over to that side?
Oh
Which
man,
movie do you think was seven, eight?
5. That was because I went to go see 5 and I looked around and I was like,
He said, me and 30 of my closest friends, and
yes.
none of them were of the female sex. Okay. But anyways, draft day two, everybody. I'm
Yeah.
gonna do a whole podcast. I might do two. It might be a
Are
month
we
of
gonna
draft
like
day
do a
pod.
fan fiction podcast and just make it like our version of what Draft Day 2 is gonna be?
You
Just
guys
like
don't
a.
even know the expediency at which the theme of this podcast will change for like a month or two
It's just gonna be like
if draft day
a
two is
table
announced.
read, but just split up into like 4 parts.
There's gonna be a casting wish list episode. There's going to be a mock draft. There's going to be a oh my god yeah there's gonna like a whole episode on like what celebrities should be prospects in the movie, which
Oh,
football players
okay,
should be
okay.
playing football players that are not themselves. Shout out Arian Foster. um Arian Foster's got to be back in this. Oh my gosh. But then Barstow's gonna be in it. All right, anyways, we're done.
Thinking now you got my brain working as far as
I
like
know, I know,
casting.
I know. I can't believe I dropped this an hour and 30 minutes into the podcast. Um, all right, we'll do this another time. This will be a whole thing,
Anyways,
dude. I'm
yeah.
stoked. All right, anyways, back to the podcast. This feels lame. It's the Coach Pen. I hate rookie quarterbacks. They're dumb and they're scared award. And this was just another interesting draft trend for me where Taylor Green and Cole Peyton fell to the fifth and sixth round, or sixth and fifth rounds, respectively. I guess I said them out of order. Meanwhile, Carson Beck goes pick 65. Kate Klubnik goes in the fourth round. Drew Aller has kind of the intersection of like experience, production, tools. He needs development. He goes kind of in between everybody at the end of the third round. But it just, throughout the college football season, Green and Peyton were kind of off over there in the corner. And it wasn't until like Senior Bowl, combine, all this stuff that the buzz and you pay attention at that point because it's not just about the workouts, but the buzz of NFL teams talking to media people, and these guys are going up boards. Now it seems like they're going to be the day two picks, and the experienced guys are going to be the day three picks. To the point that like my guy Cade Klubnik, I said this to you at one point during the process, like they just stopped putting. I just stopped getting access to his film. They just stopped like putting because they were like he's toast. Like it's been 2 weeks, he's gonna go undrafted. And meanwhile, I was like, I don't know. At least he's that backup range, fourth, fifth round, and he goes in the middle of the fourth, like classic Jets, just like not classic Jets, classic move. And it's the Jets saying we have a starter, we'll get a young backup, we'll give him 4 games at the end of the year while we're tanking, just to make sure he's not Tom Brady, and then we'll draft our guy, in the first round. Um, and then he'll be a backup for us. But coaches, I said this earlier about the guys without a position. They're scared, man. These coaches don't want to coach anymore. They don't want to develop guys. They don't want to take a. And listen, maybe this is media getting too excited because, like, yeah, man, I didn't deep dive these guys' film or anything, but like they clearly have flaws. Peyton wasn't even a quarterback really until this year, so it's like all this untapped potential. So I shouldn't even say coaches are scared to do it because, like, I don't know. I kind of like Aller. I kind of like Club. I don't know if I'd take a swing on those guys. But for us to have gotten excited about Peyton and Green as like, oh, these guys are probably actually day two and they're probably quarterbacks 3 and 4 off the board, if not 4 and 5. And for them to go so late, the league is telling us like, no, these project guys, these guys we have to take real time to develop. Look what happened to the Colts and Anthony Richardson. And not that his tools were to the same degree as this, but look at the kid in Minnesota. We can't the ever since I started doing this with the pod, the phrase around the draft that I've heard more than I ever thought I would was the NFL is not a developmental league. And like when we sit here and we're like, man, it should be easy to get this guy running training camp and preseason. Um, if he's not a quarterback, like get him some snaps in a game. And that's just not the way it goes, man. That's not, and I don't know if there's going to be an era of coaches that do that sort of thing. Um, but right now, these coaches are just like, nah, you're telling me I need to dedicate a whole part of my day. Like, listen to everything KOC did. And I can't even remember your quarterback's name now. Who's the kid in Minnesota out of Michigan?
JJ McCarthy.
Can't even remember his name now, man. He's
Nine.
so.
Good.
And I actually was a JD defender through, but like he's gone at this point.
Yeah.
Anyways, like listen to all this stuff. Like KOC blocked a time of his day every single day just to sit down with him individually, one on one. And then I can only imagine the stuff that was happening on the field for him with like quarterback coaches or assistant quarterback coach or whatever, um, film room, extra work, blah blah blah. And after 1 year, they're just like, yeah, toast, done. We're moving on. Can't do it anymore. And if the guy that says teams fail quarterbacks, quarterbacks don't fail teams, is giving up on the quarterback after a year, the league's just not about it right now. So I don't know if this is going to be, we talked about trends and cycles and everything. I don't know how long this is going to happen for. I mean, you look, the Seahawks just took Milrow in the third round last year ahead of some of these like backup archetype types. But like, you look at the names of that class and the guys after Milrow weren't even as intriguing as backups as Beck or Aller or Klubnik, in my opinion. Um, but you see how many backups are playing. They're playing a handful of games. You're seeing the value of backup quarterbacks in terms of the contracts they're getting. And teams would just rather in the fourth round take a guy that can be a backup and save, the financial value. A good backup is 10 million bucks at least, 10 to 15 maybe, depending on your situation. Let's get that guy for 2 or 3, and he'll be our backup for his rookie contract instead of paying the same 2 to 3 and I've got to now spend all this extra time on him too. So it's the financial equity, but it's also the time equity that they're saving. And they're like, the juice ain't worth the squeeze. If he's not a guy I'm going to take in the first round, I'm not going to put that kind of effort in. And if I do take him in the first round, I'm still not going to put that kind of effort in for more than a
Yeah.
year or two. Um,
Yeah.
so this is the Coach Penn. I hate rookie quarterbacks. They're dumb and they're scared award.
Yeah, and to your point, like we've already seen that the NFL kind of tell us that really if you're not pick 40 or earlier, like we're just not gonna take a developmental guy
Yep.
any earlier than that. And now, granted, you've only seen that happen more recently, where the teams have kind of gotten wise to that, right?
Hmm.
You go as recent as let's just say 2021, right? And you get a whole slew of guys on day two, like Kyle Trask, Kellen Mond, Davis Mills, where
Hmm.
I would say Trask maybe is more like viewed as the ready made kind of backup style, but like Mond and Mills were seen as these developmental guys who had all these tools and like size and such, very different types of quarterbacks, um, but ultimately like that, one ends up becoming a backup like quality quarterback in Davis Mills, and then the other one's just like completely out of the league after
Hmm.
2 seasons, whatever it was. But you end up looking and shortly after that, you see less and less of these guys go that early and that high. Like I think the last real guy that was taken that early that just team said, all right, this prototype and this use of draft capital at this point is just not worth it if we're going to invest in a quarterback. Like Will Levis is the most recent example where
Hmm.
he's a true, even if we didn't think it at the time, he is a true developmental quarterback who, even if he was taken at the top of the second, teams do not really love taking. If they don't think you're a first round quarterback, they really don't want to take you. Unless it's a very specific circumstance. Like Shuck is, it's only 1 year so far,
Hmm.
but like I even think he's the exception to the rule just because they almost. I mean, that pick was kind of, I don't want to say it was mocked, but like people thought that he was way overdrafted,
Hmm.
and he just happened to be the anomaly and proved everybody wrong as a result of it, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Same thing with in a way Jalen Hurts up to this point, but like that's two out of I mean, God, like probably 50 examples of these
Yeah.
guys that are taken between rounds 2 and 4 that are this developmental, have to be in the right system in order for them to really become the player that you think they can be as a
Hmm.
quarterback. Um, but otherwise, like it does not pan out. And there's, so you kind of said this in a different way, but there's, um, there's the old adage that has started to kind of become like almost like a commandment of sorts in regards to developing prospects, especially quarterbacks, in the league, where it's just more prospects ruined than developed, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And I think that we're just going to continue to see that play itself out, right?
Yeah.
And unfortunately for the Taylor Greens of the world, where they have all the athleticism in the world, like that's, I think this is just what they're destined to be. Like same thing with Cole Peyton, who is a run first style quarterback, but I mean, he really doesn't have all the progression, understanding, and
Hmm.
actually playing the quarterback position part of playing football down to a science. And as a result, like there's just, I think that we're at a point where teams are too smart to do that.
Hmm.
They've already done it in the last 10 years enough, taking shots, especially and really what broke this calculus was freaking Josh Allen, and Lamar Jackson, where it's like,
Right.
maybe not Lamar, but Josh Allen especially, where it was like everybody thought he was a developmental quarterback, right? But when you look back at it, in my opinion, like I was a Josh Allen defender, and I think he was just an exception to the rule of like he just happened to be really good. It was at a crap team in Wyoming, and then got put on a Bills team that didn't really know how to use him. But as soon as they figured out how to use him, it wasn't that he needed to be developed. It was just that he needed to be put into the right system, in order to maximize his abilities.
Hmm.
And then all of a sudden becomes an accurate passer, and here we are.
Yeah.
Almost 10 years later. Um, and really, like that kind of the Josh Allen effect took a hold of the league for a while in a way where they were just trying to find the next like athletic freak like Josh Allen
Hmm.
who could eventually, you could teach him how to become an accurate quarterback, which just doesn't happen. Like that's
Yeah.
not a normal thing.
Yeah.
So,
And I do think the pinnacle of that attempt was Anthony Richardson, and like
absolutely.
that's done,
Yeah.
right? And then this day two version, and you look through, and if you really kind of think about it, you can find small examples. So that same Will Levis draft you were talking about, Hendon Hooker goes in
Yes.
the third round,
Yeah.
and then who goes later? Aiden O'Connell, Dorian Thompson. I almost said Dorian Finney-Smith, Dorian Thompson Robinson, even Stetson Bennett, who like was way overdrafted, fourth
Right.
round, obviously, but like profiled as that classic backup. But like those guys, Levis and Hooker, go ahead of him. You look at Desmond Ritter goes ahead of Malik Willis in
Mm-hmm.
2022. Um, you mentioned that Trask and Mills and Mond class, but there was one other one. Oh, you mentioned Hertz. Um, Drew Lock over like a Will Greer or Jarrett
Yeah.
Stidham, right?
Yep.
Um, and then even up till last year, in a way, like I said, with Jalen Milrow going above a Dylan Gabriel or even a Shadur, whatever you think of that,
Yeah. Yeah.
or even Will Howard, like Will Howard dropping down to the six.
Yeah.
But now all of a sudden, like Will Howard was in this draft. I mean, he might have been a first round pick, but like he would have been picked 65 to the Cardinals, right? Like Will
Right. Right.
Howard
Right.
would have been Beck of this year.
Yes.
Um, but instead they're like, now we'll take Beck, now we'll take Aller, now we'll take Klubnik. And then it's the Eagles and the Browns, who you mentioned them and they're in the top tier for you of like aggressive and interesting and swings. And they're like, oh yeah, well, fifth or sixth round, we'll take those guys. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't even know if this will be like a trend of the future if teams are done taking the swings. But like this year, right now, these guys are like, yeah, we're out. We're done with that.
Yeah.
All right. That is going to do it. That is our draft awards show for the 2026 NFL draft. We will be back. We're going to talk draft one way or another on this feed over the next several weeks. Box Score YouTube is going to have stuff as well all summer long. Ben Parker is already cooking up 2027 mocks. I know that for a fact. We're going to be doing that even earlier than everybody expects. So if you want literally draft year round, Box Score Network YouTube channel is going to be the place for that. This channel is not going to change. We'll finish out. We'll talk about the 2026 draft for a while. We'll do fun draft stuff with Ben when he's on. Maybe we'll get Peyton on for some of that stuff still in the future over the summer. But then we'll start getting you ready for the 2027 season, or 2026. Wow, let's get ready for 2027. What do you think about that, Peyton? 2026 season. So thank you to Peyton for being on. Thank you to all for listening. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe, like, comment. Appreciate you. If you are here, audio A1 Day One, as always, thank you so much. And we will talk to you guys soon. So have fun and be safe out there.